Hi everybody, Imran here, and I just wanted to check in with you and say thank you very much to you and your support, and also Rob Hahn for selecting me as one of the most interesting people in real estate for 2018. Rob and I have been talking about this for a little while, and I was so appreciative, and I actually thought it was a joke that he wanted me to be on this list, and I'm very thankful to have been selected for this. With that said, I did give Rob permission to share my story, but in retrospect and in reflection to the videos that were provided, I did ask Rob to remove all mentions of my family in regards to my sisters, my youth, etc. I think that that was a presentation that was done in a private setting, and I owe it to my family to make sure to respect making sure that we don't publicize that in a very private matter for our family. So I did ask Rob to take that down. However, I did tell him to continue using any videos that included my father and my father's legacy and his publishing of his book that he created. So while I've respectfully asked Rob to do this, he reluctantly said he would because he wanted to share my story, but I wanted to make sure that I addressed all of you as to why I've asked for these to be modified from the original version. I am proud to have been on this list, and I'm proud to represent the company of NextHome and Realty World Northern California and Nevada to be an ambassador for our companies. So thank you very much for your support, and whoever thought Rob's blog got so much visibility, so we appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks again for including me on the list, Rob. My mother's name was Adoration Aberine, Adoration. Beautiful woman. She was born in Manila, Philippines. She worked as a laborer, she worked in the fields there for, I think, maybe $1 a day at the time, not very much. My father, Imran Poladi, born in Quetta, Pakistan. I'm half Filipino, half Pakistani. My dad, a hardworking man who decided to go to the University of Philippines to get his education. He went there and saw my mom in a restaurant. The two of them were barely learning English, but they fell in love with each other. My dad decided to, after he graduated from the University of Philippines, move to the United States. He got accepted into Cornell University, became a double master. Went to Cornell, and he worked at Kmart as a plant manager, not like a nuclear power plant, like plants, like watering the plants at Kmart. And he saved up all his money. He had a couple of pairs of pants, a few shirts, and he saved up all his money. And that woman that he was writing letters to with that broken English, saying things like, "Me love you," because he's learning how to speak English, and my mother returning the words, "Love too." Those back and forths happened for 3 years before my dad could afford to bring my mom over. When they came, they fell in love. They worked on learning English together. My dad and mom got married in 1976 in Nevada. In love, learning about each other, learning about how to speak to each other. They weren't able to really talk to each other, but when you're in love, what do you need to know other than, "I'm here for you"? As they were learning English and getting better at it, they did the citizenship thing. My mother became an American citizen. My father followed as well. Both of them proud Americans. Then, in 1977, they had a chubby little kid. And that chubby little kid with a funny name was perfect in every way if you look at him. I still wear my hat like that. And as a family, we moved to Stockton, California, where I was born and raised. Many people think of Stockton, California as poor and maybe a high crime area, and you are correct. That is right. Our family of 3 was pretty perfect. They were great. It was perfect. I thought to myself, put me in a suit and a bow tie, carry me, and make me feel special. I am your only one. 1982, my mother started being sick. I was 5 years old, my sister was 2. And my mother passed away from colon cancer at the age of 40 years old. You know I love you. What do you want? I can't play basketball with you. I'm pretty weak. What do you want? I said, Dad, I want that Tandy computer from Radio Shack so I could play King's Quest. And he says, I'll tell you what, I'll buy you that computer with King's Quest, but you have to promise me one thing. You have to learn how to type. You have to learn how to type, and I want you to learn how to listen, dictate, and write. And I said, yeah, whatever, King's Quest, right? So I think at the time, Tandy computers were in the $19,000 range. So we went, he got the Tandy computer, and he said, every night, if you're gonna play, I need to know that you're typing and learning how to type. And I said, okay. So what he did was, he moved the computer into his bedroom, so that way my dad could stay on the bed, and he'd watch me play King's Quest, and then he'd say, okay, that's enough. Time for you to type. And he would give me words like parallel. And I was a little kid with a little accent. Parallel like this, Daddy? One of these, 10 years old. And I learned how. And at the beginning of 1989, my dad said to me, okay, son, I need some help. Will you help me? And I said, yes. And he says, I'm going to lay down, I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to ask you to type something. And don't worry about if you don't understand it, just type. I said, okay, Dad, whatever you want. So what happened was my dad would close his eyes, he'd lay in the bed, and he would just say things out loud, words, sentences, phrases. He'd ask me to read it back to him, and I would do it. And to me, it didn't make any sense. I didn't understand what he was saying, so I was just typing. Type. And we did this for roughly about 3 months. Pages and pages and pages. I didn't know what was happening, and then he says, I need you to print those pages. So if you recall back then, they came on the little scored papers where you would, right? A little green and gray, and it would have that little laser printing. So we'd do that. I'd take the big stack, I'd hand it over to my dad, and he'd lay there and he'd say, thank you. And he'd look through it, and he'd just look and mark off with his little check marks. Got them back together. He told me, I need you to ride your bike, and I need you to go to the publishing store, the printing store, and I want you to drop these off. They know you're coming. I want you to do it. I said, okay, Dad. So I dropped them off, and a week and a half later, they came back nicely bound, ready to go. I handed it back to my dad, and he was like, you're the best, son, I love you. See, because what had happened was, I was writing a bunch of words that I didn't understand. I didn't even know what they meant. But over time, after my dad had sorted it out, what I'd realized is that my father was writing a book, and he did it through me. He wrote a book about his people, his culture. He did it with his eyes closed, laying on a bed, to his 10-year-old son, who typed every day for him so he could write a book. My dad, it's not like Amazon today where you just print some dumb book on demand. Back then, you had to have a publisher and figure out who was going to print this for you. My dad ran this by. It's the Hazara culture, the people who he is or who he's from. It's like 50,000 people at that time. Nobody wants to print a book about that. Who's going to read it? So my dad took every last dollar that he had, and he printed it himself. He created a book company called Mughal Publishing, and he was furiously trying to get this book out. And on October 9th, 1989, my father died. He had gotten AIDS through a blood transfusion from the liver work that he had the year before. His book, The Hazaras, came out October 14th, 1989, 5 days after he passed away. But, just like my dad always does, he puts me and my sisters first, and he included in the foreword about my sisters and I. His message lived on past that. From 11 to 14 years old, was picked on, bullied, pushed around by other kids in the orphanage. I don't blame them today. They didn't have guidance. We're from a underprivileged society in Stockton. Lack of formal education, poor. These kids didn't have much hope, so why not pick on the small kid? And that's what happened for years. And at 14 and a half, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I applied to become an emancipated minor. I made the decision that I didn't want to do this anymore, and I left. I left that orphanage. So from 15 years old on, I've always been by myself. I got a small studio apartment in Stockton. It was $210 a month. I worked at Baskin-Robbins. I scooped ice cream. In fact, in order to make more money, I would learn how to flip the scoop in the air and catch it on the cone. And I was like a dog at a pony show or something. Dog at a, that. Getting those tips were huge. When you're making $3.40 an hour, believe it or not, millennials, we used to make that even my age. Every dollar counted.